Story 1. I've been an artist for almost 15 years now. Nothing famous or spectacular, just a local painter who specializes in watercolor landscapes of our beautiful town. I've managed to turn my passion into a modest side business, selling my work at community events, local shops, and through my small website. It's not enough to quit my day job at the library, but it supplements my income nicely and keeps me creatively fulfilled. Every year, our town hosts a summer art fair in the Central Park. It's a 3-day event that brings together artists, craftspeople, food vendors, and musicians from all over the county. It's consistently my best weekend for sales of the entire year, and I spend months preparing new pieces specifically for this event. This was my 5th year participating, and I was particularly excited because I'd been experimenting with a new technique that captured the light on our town's lake in a way I'd never achieved before. I'd created a series of 6 paintings that I was genuinely proud of, with the centerpiece being a large sunset scene that had taken me over 2 months to complete. I'd priced it at $600, which was more than I'd ever asked for a single piece, but the hours and materials justified it, and I truly believed it was my best work. The fair started on Friday afternoon. Setup began at 8 a.m., with the event officially opening to the public at noon. I arrived early, around 7:30, to make sure I had plenty of time to arrange my booth perfectly. The organizers had assigned spots weeks in advance, and I was pleased to have the same location as last year, a nice corner spot with good visibility from the main walkway. I unloaded my van and began setting up my display. I had a professional booth system with grid walls that allowed me to hang my framed pieces securely. The larger pieces, including my prized sunset painting, went on easels. I arranged everything carefully, making sure the lighting was just right, and that my price tags were visible but not distracting. By 9:30, I was basically finished setting up and feeling good about my display. I decided to take a quick walk around to see who else was setting up and maybe grab a coffee from the food court that was already operational for the vendors. I wasn't gone for more than 20 minutes. When I returned, coffee in hand, I immediately noticed something was wrong with my booth. The entire right side of my display had been shifted inward, compressing my carefully arranged paintings. Several pieces were now awkwardly crowded together, and my pride and joy sunset painting was missing from its easel. I looked around in confusion and then spotted it leaning against the outside of my booth, partially hidden behind a trash can. I rushed over and felt my stomach drop. The frame was cracked at one corner, and there was a visible scratch across the glass. I carefully picked it up, my hands shaking with a mixture of anger and distress. That's when I heard a voice from the booth next to mine. "Woman. Oh, you're back. I had to move some of your things to make enough room for my display. Hope you don't mind." I turned to see a middle-aged woman I'd never met before, setting up what appeared to be a jewelry display in the booth adjacent to mine. She was arranging various beaded necklaces on a table that was clearly extending about 2 feet into what should have been my designated space. "Me, what do you mean you moved my things? This painting is damaged." She barely glanced at me, continuing to arrange her jewelry. "Woman. Well, I'm sure it was already like that. I was very careful. Besides, you were taking up too much space. The booths are supposed to be 10 by 10, and you were definitely over your boundary." I was speechless for a moment. I had measured my booth space precisely to make sure I stayed within my allotted area. Me, I was exactly within my space. You've pushed my entire display inward and damaged my most expensive painting. Woman, look, I've been doing craft fairs for 20 years. Everyone knows you have to be flexible with space. Your painting is fine, just a little scratch on the glass. You can probably wipe it off. I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure. Me, this isn't a scratch that wipes off. The glass is actually scratched, and the frame is cracked. And you had absolutely no right to touch my artwork, regardless. Woman, well, I needed the space, and you weren't here. What was I supposed to do? Wait around all day? I have a business to run. At this point, a few neighboring vendors were watching our exchange with concerned expressions. One of them, a potter I knew from previous years, approached us. "Potter, Is everything okay over here? Before I could answer, the woman jumped in. Woman, everything's fine. Just a little disagreement about space. This young lady seems to think she's entitled to more than her fair share. I was dumbfounded by her audacity. Me, I was within my assigned space. She moved my paintings without permission and damaged my most valuable piece. The potter looked at the painting I was still carefully holding. Potter, that's not right. No one should be touching anyone else's work. Woman, oh please, it's not that big a deal. These booths are tiny, and we all have to make accommodations. If her painting is so valuable, she shouldn't have left it unattended. My face was burning with anger and embarrassment. I couldn't believe this was happening. Me, I'm going to have to report this to the event coordinator. Woman, go ahead. They'll tell you the same thing I did about the space limitations. I've been doing this for decades, sweetheart. I know how these things work. I carefully set my damaged painting aside and went to find the event coordinator. I located her near the entrance, clipboard in hand, directing some late-arriving vendors. I explained the situation as calmly as I could, though I was still shaking slightly. The coordinator, a no-nonsense woman named Jan who had run this event for years, listened attentively. Coordinator, let me come take a look. We don't tolerate vendors moving each other's property, and all the spaces are clearly marked. We walked back to my booth, where the woman was now fully set up and chatting with a potential customer as if nothing had happened. When she saw me returning with the coordinator, she rolled her eyes dramatically. Coordinator, excuse me, ma'am. I understand there's been an issue with booth boundaries. Woman, oh, not really. I just had to adjust things a bit to fit my display. No big deal. Coordinator, actually, it is a big deal. Vendors are never permitted to move another vendor's property. Each booth has clearly marked boundaries. The coordinator pulled out her map and pointed to the chalk marks on the pavement that delineated our spaces. It was immediately obvious that the woman's table was at least 2 feet over the line into my space. Woman, well, those marks aren't very clear, and anyway, I needed the space for my premium items. My jewelry needs to be properly displayed to show its value. The coordinator looked at her sternly. Coordinator, that's not how this works. You need to move your display back within your allocated space immediately. Woman, that's ridiculous. I won't have room for all my pieces then. Coordinator, that's not our problem. You agreed to a 10x10 space when you registered. The woman huffed indignantly. Woman, fine, but I don't see what the big fuss is about. It's just a little space. Coordinator, I also understand you damaged one of this vendor's paintings. Woman, I most certainly did not. If anything was damaged, it was already like that. I barely touched her things. At that moment, another vendor approached us. Vendor, actually, I saw the whole thing. She definitely moved those paintings, and she wasn't careful about it. I saw her drop the big one behind the trash can. Woman, that's a lie. Who are you anyway? You didn't see anything. Vendor, I was setting up right over there. And actually, I took a video because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The vendor pulled out her phone and showed us a clear video of the woman roughly shoving my grid walls inward and then awkwardly maneuvering my large sunset painting, struggling with it before propping it carelessly against the trash can. The woman's face turned an alarming shade of red. Woman, you had no right to film me. That's invasion of privacy. Coordinator, ma'am, this is a public event. Now I've seen enough. Not only did you move another vendor's property without permission, but you damaged valuable artwork and then lied about it. Woman, so what? It's just a painting. She can make another one. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The coordinator looked equally shocked. Coordinator, this type of behavior is absolutely unacceptable. I'm going to have to ask you to pack up your things and leave the event. Woman, what? You can't be serious. I paid for this booth. Coordinator, your registration fee will be refunded, but you cannot participate in this event. We have a zero-tolerance policy for this kind of behavior. Woman, this is outrageous. Do you know how much preparation I've done for this fair? I drove 3 hours to get here. Coordinator, you should have thought about that before touching someone else's property. And to be clear, you're also banned from future events. The woman looked like she might explode. Woman, you can't do that. I'll sue. I'll report this to the Chamber of Commerce. Coordinator, feel free to do whatever you think is necessary. In the meantime, please pack up your items. I'll have security escort you out if needed. The woman glared at all of us, then began angrily throwing her jewelry into boxes. Woman, this is discrimination. I'm being targeted because you all know my items would outsell your amateur garbage. She continued muttering and complaining as she packed, but no one was really listening anymore. The coordinator turned to me. Coordinator, I'm so sorry this happened. Please document the damage to your painting for our records. The fair carries insurance for incidents like this, and will make sure you're compensated. I thanked her, still processing what had just happened. The neighboring vendor who had recorded the video came over and offered to send me the footage. Vendor, I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw her moving your stuff. That painting is beautiful. By the way, I'm so sorry it was damaged. Me, thank you for recording that. I don't think she would have admitted anything otherwise. By this time, a small crowd of vendors had gathered, watching as the woman continued her dramatic exit, now loudly proclaiming that she would never set foot in this second-rate fair again anyway. Security, ma'am, we need you to finish packing up and move your vehicle from the vendor parking area. Woman, I'm going as fast as I can. This is ridiculous. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. Eventually, she was escorted out, still ranting. The coordinator helped me rearrange my display back to its original configuration. Though we managed to get everything looking good again, my sunset painting remained damaged. The coordinator took photos of it and had me fill out an incident report. The fair opened to the public at noon as scheduled. Throughout the weekend, word of the incident spread among the vendors, and many stopped by to express their support. Several even recommended a skilled framer who might be able to repair the damage. Surprisingly, the drama seemed to have a silver lining. Many visitors to my booth had heard about the incident, and there was something about the story of the damaged painting that resonated with people. I ended up selling every single piece I brought except the damaged sunset painting. On Sunday afternoon, as the fair was winding down, a couple who had visited my booth multiple times over the weekend approached me. Man, we've been admiring your work all weekend. We'd like to buy the sunset painting. I was surprised. Me, even with the damaged frame. Woman, actually, we'd like to help you restore it. Our daughter is a professional art conservator. We think this piece is special and deserves to be preserved properly. They offered me the full asking price of $600, and I was deeply moved by their gesture. I carefully wrapped the painting for them, feeling a sense of closure. As I was packing up at the end of the fair, the coordinator stopped by my booth. Coordinator, I wanted to let you know that we've permanently banned that woman from all events our organization runs, not just this fair. We have her on our blacklist now, and the insurance claim is being processed. You should receive compensation for the damage within a few weeks. Me, thank you. Despite everything, it ended up being a good weekend. Coordinator, I'm glad to hear that, and I want you to know that we've implemented a new policy for next year. All vendors will receive information about proper booth etiquette, with specific emphasis on never touching another vendor's work. We're calling it the Respect Artist Space Policy. Your unfortunate experience is going to help protect other artists in the future. I left the fair that evening feeling a mix of emotions, still upset about the incident, but heartened by the support I'd received from the community and the fair organizers. I later learned that the woman had tried to register for other local art fairs under a different business name, but the video evidence had circulated among event organizers in our region, and she was being turned away consistently. The couple who purchased my damaged painting sent me a photo a month later. Their daughter had expertly repaired the frame and replaced the glass. The painting now hung in their living room, looking even better than when it left my studio. They invited me to see it in person and commissioned 2 more pieces to go with it. In the end, what could have been a devastating blow to my confidence as an artist turned into a reminder of why I love our creative community. For every entitled person who thinks rules don't apply to them, there are dozens of others who understand the value of respect, integrity, and supporting local artists. I sold out at this year's fair for the first time ever, and I've already started planning an entirely new collection for next year, including another sunset piece that I think might be even better than the last. Story 2. Let me back up a bit. I'm 16 years old, and I was diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome (EDS) when I was 12. It's a rare connective tissue disorder that affects my joint, skin, and basically everything else in my body. Some days are better than others. On good days, I can walk short distances with leg braces. On bad days, I need my wheelchair to get around. Living with an invisible disability is frustrating. When people see a teenager in a wheelchair, they automatically assume either a sports injury or that I can't walk at all. They don't understand that for me, mobility exists on a spectrum. Sometimes I can stand or even take a few steps. Sometimes I can't. My condition fluctuates daily, even hourly. My parents have been incredibly supportive throughout everything. My dad built ramps around our house, and my mom learned everything she could about my condition. They never treat me like I'm fragile, but they understand my limitations. Last Saturday was one of my bad days. I'd had physical therapy the day before, which always leaves me exhausted and sore. But I needed to go to the mall to buy a birthday present for my best friend's party that evening. My mom offered to go for me, but I wanted to pick something out myself. So she drove me to the mall, helped me get into my wheelchair, and we agreed to meet at the food court in an hour. The mall was crowded, as usual on weekends. I navigated through the masses of shoppers, politely asking people to move when they blocked the path. Most were accommodating, stepping aside with quick apologies. I made it to the bookstore without incident and spent some time picking out the perfect gift, a collection of graphic novels my friend had been talking about for months. After paying, I decided to stop by the assistive technology store near the center of the mall. They'd recently gotten some new smartwatch accessories designed for people with mobility issues, and I wanted to check them out. As I was examining one of the displays, I felt a strange sensation, that prickly feeling you get when someone is staring at you. I turned my head and noticed a middle-aged woman watching me from across the store. She had that classic Karen look, highlighted bob haircut, designer sunglasses perched on her head, and an expression of perpetual disapproval. I tried to ignore her and continued looking at the display. A few minutes later, I needed to adjust my position. My joints were getting stiff, so I shifted in my seat and stood up briefly to stretch before sitting back down. It's something I often need to do to prevent my muscles from cramping. That's when I heard her voice, loud and accusatory. "Woman, excuse me, what do you think you're doing?" I turned, confused, to find her standing right behind me. "Me, sorry, I'm just shopping." "Woman, I saw you stand up. You're faking being disabled. That's disgusting." My heart started racing. This wasn't the first time someone had confronted me about my disability, but it never got easier. Me, I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It's a condition that affects my mobility. Sometimes I can stand for short periods, but I can't walk far. "Woman, that's convenient. I've never heard of that. Sounds made up to me." She crossed her arms and looked down at me with such contempt that I felt my face burning with embarrassment. "Me, it's a real medical condition. You can look it up." "Woman, I don't need to look it up. I know what I saw. You're just a teenager looking for attention, taking resources from people who actually need them." By now, other customers were staring. The store employee behind the counter looked uncomfortable, but hadn't intervened yet. "Me, please leave me alone. I'm just trying to shop like everyone else." "Woman, no, I'm not going to let this go. You're committing fraud. My sister is truly disabled and needs a wheelchair. You're making a mockery of people like her." I felt tears threatening to form, but I was determined not to cry in front of this woman. Me. This conversation is over. Please stop harassing me. I tried to wheel away, but she stepped in front of my chair, blocking my path. Woman, I'm calling security. They need to know there's a fraud in the mall. Before I could respond, she pulled out her phone and started dialing. The store employee finally approached. Employee, is everything okay here? Me. No, this woman is harassing me about my disability and won't let me leave. Woman, this teenager is faking a disability. I saw them stand up from the wheelchair. They're perfectly capable of walking. The employee looked between us, clearly trying to assess the situation. Employee, ma'am, please step aside and let the customer leave if they wish. Woman, no, I'm calling mall security right now. This is fraud and it's illegal. The employee looked at me apologetically. Employee, I'm going to call the manager. While the employee went to the back of the store, the woman continued her tirade, loud enough for everyone in the vicinity to hear. Woman, you should be ashamed of yourself. There are veterans and elderly people who actually need wheelchairs, and here you are, a perfectly healthy teenager, pretending to be disabled for special treatment. I was trapped, humiliated, and fighting back tears. I reached for my phone to call my mom, but my hands were shaking too much to dial properly. Thankfully, the store manager appeared quickly, a tall woman with a no-nonsense expression. Manager, what seems to be the problem? Woman, this teenager is faking being disabled. They stood up from their wheelchair. I want them removed from the mall for fraud. The manager turned to me, her expression softening slightly. Manager, would you like to explain your side? Me, I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It's a connective tissue disorder that affects my mobility. Sometimes I can stand briefly, but I can't walk far without pain and risk of injury. I was just trying to shop when this woman started harassing me. Woman, they're lying. I saw them stand up perfectly fine. Manager, ma'am, many wheelchair users have partial mobility. That doesn't mean they don't need a wheelchair. Woman, I'm not stupid. I know a scammer when I see one. I've already called mall security. They're on their way. The manager sighed deeply. Manager, I'm going to ask you to stop harassing our customer. Whether or not someone needs a mobility aid is between them and their doctor, not a stranger in a store. Woman, fine. We'll let security sort this out. She stepped back, but continued to glare at me. The manager leaned down to speak to me quietly. Manager, are you okay? Would you like to wait in our office until security arrives? Me? Yes, please. And can I call my mom? She's somewhere in the mall. Manager, of course. The manager escorted me to a small office at the back of the store and handed me a bottle of water. My hands were still shaking as I called my mom. Me, Mom? I need you to come to the assistive technology store. There's a woman who's called security on me because she thinks I'm faking my disability. Mom, what? I'll be right there. I could hear the anger in her voice. While I waited, the manager stayed with me, apologizing for what had happened. About 10 minutes later, there was a knock at the office door. The manager opened it to reveal my mom and 2 mall security officers. Security Officer 1, we received a call about someone faking a disability. Manager, yes, one of our customers made that accusation against this young person. My mom stepped forward, fury evident on her face. Mom, my child has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, a documented medical condition. Here's their medical ID card and doctor's contact information. She handed the security officer a small laminated card I always carry, which explains my condition and lists my doctor's information. Mom, who made this accusation? I want to file a harassment complaint. Security Officer 2, the woman who called us is waiting outside. We'd like to speak with everyone involved to understand the situation. We all moved back to the main store area, where the woman was still waiting, looking smug. When she saw the security officers, she immediately launched into her story. Woman, officers, I witnessed this teenager stand up from their wheelchair. They're clearly faking a disability for attention and special treatment. This is fraud. Security Officer 1. Ma'am, we've been shown medical documentation confirming a legitimate disability. Woman, that could be fake. Anyone can print a card. Security Officer 1. We'll be verifying the information, but in the meantime, I need to remind you that harassing customers in the mall is against our code of conduct. Woman, I'm not harassing anyone. I'm reporting fraud. My mom stepped forward, her voice calm but steely. Mom, my child has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a complex connective tissue disorder. Some days they can walk short distances, other days they can't walk at all. Standing up briefly to stretch is actually recommended by their physical therapist to prevent blood clots and muscle cramping. What you've done today is harass a disabled minor based on your ignorance of invisible disabilities. Woman, I don't believe you. If they can stand, they can walk. This is just attention-seeking behavior. Security Officer 2. Ma'am, regardless of your personal beliefs, your behavior today has violated our mall's harassment policy. We need to take statements from everyone involved. The security officers took statements from me, my mom, the store manager, and several witnesses who had seen the whole thing. Throughout the process, the woman continued to make snide comments and refused to believe my condition was real. After gathering all the information, the senior security officer addressed the woman. Security Officer 1. Ma'am, based on multiple witness statements and the medical documentation provided, we've determined that you have violated the mall's code of conduct by harassing a minor. We're going to have to ask you to leave the premises. Woman, what? You're taking their side? This is ridiculous. Security Officer 1. Additionally, we'll be filing an incident report. You'll be receiving a formal notice that you're banned from this mall for 3 months. If you return during that time, you could be charged with trespassing. The woman's face turned bright red. Woman, you can't ban me. I shop here all the time. I was trying to help. This is discrimination against concerned citizens. Security Officer 1. Our decision is final. I'll escort you to the exit now. Woman, this is outrageous. I'll be speaking to your supervisor. I'll call the local news. You'll all be sorry. As the security officer led the fuming woman away, the second officer turned to us. Security Officer 2. I apologize for what happened today. Please let us know if you need anything else. After they left, the store manager approached us. Manager, I'm so sorry about this incident. Please know that you're always welcome in our store. Mom, thank you for stepping in and supporting my child. When we were finally alone, my mom kneeled next to my wheelchair. Mom, are you okay? Me, I think so. Just shaken up. Mom, you handled that really well. I'm proud of you. We decided to skip the food court and head home. The entire incident had drained me completely, both physically and emotionally. As we left the mall, I couldn't help feeling a mix of emotions: anger at the woman's ignorance, relief that security had taken my side, and a lingering sense of violation. A week later, we received a formal letter from the mall management expressing their apologies for the incident. They confirmed that the woman had been banned for 6 months, upgraded from the initial 3 months after reviewing security footage, and that all security personnel would be receiving additional training on invisible disabilities. They also included a gift card and a personal note from the mall director inviting me to provide input for their upcoming accessibility improvements. It was a small consolation for what had happened, but it meant a lot to know they were taking it seriously. Living with an invisible disability means constantly having to justify your existence to strangers who think they know better than you and your doctors. That day at the mall wasn't my first encounter with someone like that woman, and it probably won't be my last. But every time it happens, I become a little more determined to educate others about conditions like mine. I've started a social media account sharing my experiences with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, including the mall incident. The response has been overwhelming, with thousands of people sharing similar stories of harassment and disbelief. It's sad that there are so many of us with similar experiences, but there's strength in our shared voices. As for the woman who harassed me, I sometimes wonder if the mall incident made her reconsider her assumptions about disabilities, or if she's still out there, confronting other wheelchair users who dare to stand up. Either way, I hope she learned something from having to face consequences for her actions. Some lessons are harder to learn than others. Story 3. The day we buried my father was the worst day of my life. Not just because I was saying goodbye to the man who had raised me, taught me to fish, and helped me through my darkest moments, but also because of what happened at the cemetery. Dad had battled cancer for 3 years. At first, the doctors were optimistic. Caught it early, they said. But cancer doesn't play by the rules. It spread slowly at first, then all at once, like wildfire through dry brush. In his final months, he made all his own arrangements. That was Dad never wanting to burden anyone, even in death. "I want to be buried under the big oak tree at Greenfield Cemetery," he told me one evening as I sat by his hospital bed. "Your mother and I used to have picnics there before you kids were born. It's peaceful." It took some doing, but I managed to secure that spot. The cemetery administrator explained it was one of their most requested locations, but a plot had recently become available. I paid extra for it, knowing it would have meant everything to Dad. The funeral was set for Wednesday at 11 a.m. We arrived early to set up chairs beneath the massive oak tree. Its sprawling branches created a natural canopy, dappling the ground with shadows and sunlight. The funeral home had placed my father's casket on a lowering device, covered with a green cloth to simulate grass. My mother, my 2 sisters, my brother, and I sat in the front row, along with Dad's brother and sister. Behind us were about 40 people, friends, extended family, and former colleagues. Dad had been well liked at the manufacturing company where he'd worked for 30 years before his retirement. His boss had even closed the office for the morning so everyone could attend. The minister had just begun speaking about Dad's life when I heard a sharp voice behind us. "Karen, excuse me, what do you people think you're doing?" At first, I thought she was talking to someone else. The minister paused, and everyone turned to look. A woman in her 50s with highlighted blonde hair cut in an angled bob stood at the edge of our gathering. She wore designer sunglasses and a beige pantsuit that looked too formal for a casual visit to a cemetery, but not formal enough for a funeral. "Minister, ma'am, we're in the middle of a service." "Karen, well, you're in my spot. I come here every Thursday to sit under this tree and visit my husband. This is my special place." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Was this woman seriously interrupting my father's funeral to claim ownership of a tree in a public cemetery? My brother stood up. Always the diplomat of the family, he approached her calmly. "My brother, I understand this might be your regular spot, but we've arranged with the cemetery to hold our father's funeral here today. We'll be finished in about an hour if you'd like to come back then." "Karen, no, this is my tree. Everyone here knows I sit under this tree. My husband is buried on the other side of the cemetery, but this is where I come to think. You need to move this whole thing somewhere else." She waved her hand dismissively at my father's casket. My mother began to cry softly. My youngest sister put her arm around Mom's shoulders. I stood up now too, anger building inside me. Ma'am, with all due respect, we're burying our father today. We've paid for this plot, specifically under this tree, because it meant something to him. Please allow us our time to grieve." "Karen, I don't care what you paid for. I've been coming here for 5 years. Everyone knows this is my spot. I have rights too." By now, people were shifting uncomfortably in their chairs. Dad's former coworkers exchanged bewildered glances. My aunt was frantically texting someone. I later learned she was messaging the cemetery office for help. The minister tried again. "Minister, perhaps we could speak about this after the service. We're here to honor this family's father." "Karen, they should have checked with the regulars before setting up here. This is incredibly inconsiderate." She stepped closer, actually entering the area where the chairs were set up. I couldn't believe the audacity. Who disrupts a funeral for a sitting spot? "Me, please leave. Now." "Karen, don't you dare speak to me like that. Do you know who I am?" My husband was a very important businessman. and I have been coming to this spot every week since he died. The staff all know me here. They'll tell you this is my spot." My oldest sister, who had remained seated until now, stood up and approached Karen. Unlike my brother and me, my sister has never been one to hold back. "My sister, lady, there is no such thing as your spot in a public cemetery unless you've purchased the plot. We have purchased this plot, right here, under this tree, for our father. Now get out of here before I call the police for harassment." "Karen, go ahead and call them. I know the sheriff personally. He'll tell you that I have every right to be here." At this point, 2 staff members from the cemetery office arrived. They'd been alerted by my aunt's message. One of them, an older man in a dark green uniform, immediately recognized the situation. "Cemetery staff 1. Ma'am, I need you to step away from this funeral service immediately." "Karen, finally, someone with authority. Tell these people they can't just take over my special spot without permission." The staff member looked confused for a moment, then his expression changed to one of recognition. "Cemetery staff 1, Mrs. Karen's last name. We've discussed this before. You don't own this area of the cemetery. This family has legally purchased this burial plot and has every right to hold their service here." "Karen, but everyone knows I sit here on Thursdays. You should have warned me they were going to be here." Cemetery staff 2. "Ma'am, we don't schedule the public areas of the cemetery around your visiting preferences. Now please, let this family continue their service in peace." "Karen, this is outrageous. I'm a paying customer too. I've already purchased my own plot here. I demand to speak to the manager." Cemetery staff 1. "I am the manager, and if you continue to disrupt this funeral service, I'll have no choice but to escort you from the property." Karen seemed shocked that she wasn't getting her way. Her face flushed red with anger, and for a moment, I thought she might actually leave. Instead, she did something so outrageous I still have trouble believing it happened. She marched up to the chairs where my mother and sisters were sitting and started trying to move them. "Karen, fine. If you won't move your service, I'll just make my own space right here." My mother let out a cry of distress. One of my sisters jumped up to stop Karen from touching our elderly mother. The other mourners gasped. A few men from my dad's workplace stood up, clearly ready to intervene. That's when the cemetery manager and his colleague each took one of Karen's arms. "Cemetery staff 1, that's enough. You're leaving now." "Karen, take your hands off me. Do you know who my lawyer is? I'll sue this entire cemetery. I'll own this whole place." Cemetery staff 2. "Ma'am, you're trespassing and harassing a grieving family. We're escorting you to the exit." "Karen, I'm not trespassing. I have a plot here. You can't kick me out of a place where I own property." As they led her away, she continued shouting threats and insults. Her voice gradually faded as they took her toward the main entrance. The minister, who had remained admirably calm throughout, suggested we take a moment of silent reflection before continuing. We sat in silence for a full minute. I could hear birds singing in the oak tree above us, and somehow that natural sound helped bring us back to the purpose of why we were there. We were laying my father to rest in a place that had meant something to him. The service resumed, though the atmosphere had been irreparably altered. After the final prayers, as my father's casket was being lowered into the ground, the cemetery manager returned. He quietly apologized for the disruption and assured us that such behavior would not be tolerated on their grounds. Later, as people were leaving and offering final condolences, he pulled me aside. "Cemetery staff 1, I want you to know we've taken action regarding that woman." "Me, what kind of action?" Cemetery staff 1, our cemetery has a code of conduct policy that all plot owners must adhere to. Harassing other families, especially during services, is grounds for revoking purchase agreements. We've refunded her prepaid plot purchase and banned her from buying another plot here. "Me, can you do that legally?" Cemetery staff 1, yes. It's clearly stated in the contract she signed. We've never had to enforce it before, but her behavior today was beyond unacceptable. Your father deserved better, and so did your family." I thanked him, feeling a strange mix of vindication and sadness. No one should have their grief hijacked by someone else's sense of entitlement. We later learned from one of the groundskeepers that Karen had indeed been coming to sit under that oak tree weekly, but she'd also had conflicts with other visitors before. She'd yelled at children for playing too close to her tree and had complained about a bird-watching group that sometimes gathered there. The staff had warned her multiple times about her behavior, but she'd never done anything as egregious as disrupting a funeral. 2 weeks after the funeral, I returned to place flowers on my father's grave. The oak tree rustled peacefully overhead. An elderly couple was sitting on a bench nearby, quietly enjoying the shade. They nodded respectfully as I placed the bouquet. I nodded back, grateful for the simple human acknowledgement of shared space and shared respect. As I sat there talking quietly to Dad, telling him about how his grandkids were doing and how Mom was holding up, I realized something important. No one owns the shade of a tree, the peace of a place, or the right to grieve. These things belong to all of us, to be shared with dignity and compassion. Dad would have found the whole situation with Karen ridiculous, then sad. Some people, he would have said, shaking his head, never learned to play nice in the sandbox. He was right, of course. He usually was. I visit his grave regularly now. Sometimes I sit under that oak tree and watch the light filter through the leaves. Occasionally other mourners or visitors share the space. We exchange quiet nods or gentle smiles, silent acknowledgments of our common humanity in the face of loss. And not once have I thought of it as my spot.